So, guys, let's start and go over the history of the major scale, what I call the happy scale. So, let's say about 6,000 to 5,000 years ago, humans had some instruments but could sing, but didn't have a really good understanding of pitch and harmony and stuff like that. Now, rewind 2,500 years ago during the period with ancient Greeks, they really started the idea of ancient music theory. People like Pythagoras and other Greek thinkers used vibrating instruments to find like a mathematically related pitches. They didn't have the groundwork yet for the major scale, but at least they were sort of in a way, breaking the groundwork for future generations to pick it up later on. But they really set a standard for Western tuning systems during their time that, a couple thousand years later would be standardized in Europe. But that's the history, the ancient history before the major scale really got off the ground. But yeah. The major scale as we know today wasn't developed until much later. We can say that during the late Middle Ages, late Renaissance time, about 1500 to 1700, composers at the time were more and more going away from playing church, medieval church modes, which were darker and a little bit more foreboding. And they favored the Ionian, which the Ionian mode became standardized to become the major scale for tonal harmony. And when they discovered this, what we know today, and they figured out back then, is that the major scale and major, music has much more of an uplifting and happy, joyful tone. And so this was used in music from there, and we still have it today. And so that's where it really started. So the major scale at the time during the late Renaissance, the composers created a specific pattern for the major scale, which uses whole steps and half steps. Now, the pattern that they created goes as seen below: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. This pattern has been used ever since, and you can use it to figure out scale in any major scale with all 12 notes that I showed earlier on. So that's the pattern. Make sure you memorize it. Write it down. You can do WWH, WWWH. Just get that pattern memorized until you have it so that when you pick out any key or any note, you can find its scale and, it'll make it a lot easier. In terms of modern times, the major scale has been integral in most careers for musicians when creating music, especially when they want a more happy and upbeat tone. You hear it in a lot of pop and worship music that has much more of a happy sound compared to minor keys. And so musicians today can use the major scale to create songs, usually using the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord or 5 note to make a chord. And you can use, each scale to create your own chord progressions, which we'll talk about later. But now that we have a good understanding of what the major scale is, its pattern and its history, tomorrow we'll be going over like the C major scale, G major, maybe D major, and E major. We'll be going over those scales so you can see where the sharps and flats go, you know, and that'll be, later homework will be you taking every single note, C, D, all the way, up to C again, which is an octave. You're going to take every note and find out, its scale using the whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step pattern. So that's going to be part of your homework. Anyways, thanks. Have a good night. Bye.